My name is Melinda Crasting, and this is what's left of a home that I loved very much and lived in for 20 years high on the dune in Wellfleet, Massachusetts on Cape Cod. And 4 years ago, 2 different storms scoured the land out from under my home, which meant I either had to demolish the house or instead I gave it to people to move onto other property because I didn't want to demolish a home I loved. But meanwhile, I still have a deck here and a little bit of land that I use almost on a daily basis because this spot is heaven, and I've loved it for 20 years and feel very grateful to still have it. So when I bought my home here about 20 years ago, having come to this beach, this part of Cape Cod all my life, I found this piece of heaven and moved in, spent all but the 3 winter months every year here. In the winter, the elements are so severe that you really have to board homes up. During the winters, I spent time in New York. And living like this, when you're this close to nature, you get to know it very well. It required and taught me a very Zen way of looking at life. It was very clear that I wouldn't be here forever, although when I bought my home, I had about 100 feet of frontage in front of the house. And the first 8 years of living here, I had that. And I was fairly naive, even though I had throughout the years seen houses up along this part of Wellfleet go over the years. It was very haphazard, and you kind of live a little bit in denial too. And then after 8 years, I started losing land, and it happened very suddenly. I went from that 100 or so feet of frontage to being 45 feet, and then even less, about 5 feet away. My property, the top of the dune, used to go out almost to where the water meets the sand here when I first bought it. So, 100 feet is a lot of land to lose. At any rate, when I lost that first round of property to erosion, I started looking into moving my home back. During that process, I learned that some interesting things about the house. For one, the house was built in 1929 by a single woman. And back in 1929, there wasn't much going on out here in Wellfleet, so she must have been quite a pioneer. But when she built it, there was much more land in front, including a road that ran in front of it. And I just so happened to meet her sister. She had long since passed away. The sister was quite old. But she said, oh, my sister who built the house was a painter, and I will email you some pictures that she painted. So she emailed me one in which the house was sitting right on the precipice of the dune, and it was dated 1930. And I wrote her back and I said, that's good news. That means that I've got some time. And she said, well, that was before the first 3 times we moved it. So that sweet house went through 3 moves that I didn't know about before I bought it. And then I moved it, I guess it was about 8 years ago, hoping that I was buying myself at least a couple of decades more living here. But the ocean thought differently, and 4 years later, there were 2 big nor'easters. The fact that they were kind of superstorms, they were each 3-day-long storms, which is not typical. And if they had passed through quickly in one day, I'd probably still be here. But that 3 days of battering meant that the ocean just kept scouring the land out from under my house. And when I had moved it, the National Seashore, in which this property resides, insisted that I put it on deep pilings. And that is indeed what saved the house itself from being destroyed. But because there was no land left underneath it to have a septic system or a well, the house was condemned because I had moved it back as far back on my property as I could. And so I ended up giving my home to the neighbors across the dirt road who had bought a little cottage that they were going to tear down and build something new. I said, no, I don't want to have to demolish my house. It was a house, but it was also a best friend, and a lot of wonderful things happened there. So they ended up moving the house, so that house has now been moved 5 times. Meanwhile, there are houses behind me. The third house up with the blue railings was just moved this winter. The house at the very top with the interesting roof line, the owners bought another house near me, and just as insurance. So now they own both houses, but you know, they have insurance that they'll have some place still here. So that's what's happened to me so far. Okay, well, this is my new office, where actually this was part of my original deck, and I come here almost every day to get work done and to look at that spectacular view and entertain friends. You know, I feel so lucky to have this place. A lot of people who lose their homes to environmental issues don't have anything left. If you look in that direction, the property I had used to the top of the dune easily extended to the second row of seaweed out there, if not further. You wouldn't be able to see those people on the beach or anything, you know, because the land went out. Actually, those railroad ties were part of my garden, which extended out probably another 20 feet, and then there was a huge lawn area in front of that. So, and in the other direction, there are several houses that went around the time that I lost so much. The house at the top of the hill is still owned by the people who owned it, but they bought another house on the road here so that they would have someplace once that house goes. And then the third house up was just moved this winter. This house next to me, which when I first lived here was owned by a wonderful woman who had lived here for like 40 years. And again, her property extended so far out, literally standing from here, you would just barely see the beach at all. That's how much property was lost. Now that's probably next in line to go. And there's not much you can do to really keep the land. I agree with the seashore policy, which is to, you know, let nature take its course. That ocean is a lot bigger and stronger than we people, and it's about time we put ourselves in our places. So the lesson in this for me was, more than anything, to feel such sympathy and compassion for all the people who are losing homes to forest fires, mudslides, tornadoes, you name it, losing not only their homes but entire communities within minutes and having nothing left. At least I had time to get the things that mattered to me out of my home, and I'm left with my beautiful deck, so I'm grateful. So, am I focused on the environment? Yes, I certainly am, and we all should be. You should be too.